Yay Networks.
Y'all, this project, this initiative that I'm going to be sharing with y'all today is quite possibly the most rewarding experience I've had throughout my entire career. And fortunately for me, it's something that we do every year. So we get to really immerse in that experience and that reward every single year. So I hope that y'all find this as inspiring as I do. A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us. I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. So what if we told you that within 1 week, you could experience better sleep, less puffiness around your eyes, your face, better mental clarity in just 1 week, and that in 6 weeks, with just one single change, you could experience improvement in your cholesterol and your blood pressure and your liver enzymes, all of this just with one single change. That is truly possible, y'all. And that's what we see with the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge. And so this week's episode is all about the science behind the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge. Y'all have heard me talk about it on this podcast before. It's actually happening this year. So as this podcast drops, it'll be Thursday, February 24th, 2022. The deadline to sign up is this Sunday. So if you're in New Orleans, it's the Sunday before Mardi Gras. Some people call it Bacchus Sunday. Sunday at midnight is the deadline to sign up for this year's Alcohol Free for 40 challenge. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, it already passed, and you're in anywhere in the Louisiana area, put it on your calendars for 2023. We do it every Ash Wednesday. We're kicking off Alcohol Free for 40 challenge. If you're anywhere around the country, around the world, you're hearing this podcast and you're like, darn it, I would love to be involved with something like that. We have a Facebook group, an Alcohol Free for 40 Facebook group that has a ton of support, camaraderie, ideas, recipes, tips, all of this kind of stuff in there. So if you're looking to sign up for this year, I want to make it really clear that you can't wait till Ash Wednesday. There's a lot that goes in on the back end. There's labs, there's all this other stuff that's put in there and scheduled to make sure everybody's socially distanced and all this stuff. So the deadline to sign up is Bacchus Sunday at midnight. Go to alcoholfreefor40.com. You'll see there's 6 different regions around the state. So New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Lafayette, Shreveport, Monroe, and the North Shore. It's in Covington on the North Shore. So 6 different regions that you have the option to do. You can click on that region that's closest to you. It'll bring you to the Eventbrite sign up. And it's $35. And you'll hear in just a minute all the stuff that goes into it. But it's basically over $400 worth of value that you're getting. $35 is what it costs to go through it. Signing up by Sunday at midnight is going to get you eligible. The kickoff is Ash Wednesday. So the idea is, okay, if you're going to give up alcohol, whether it's for Lent or any other time, let's do these labs that we'll be talking about. Let's do these physical metrics and let's make it your own self-experiment so that you can truly see the impact that alcohol has both inside, what we can't see, but also outside. We do blood pressure, we do body composition, but we also take this really up-close photo of your face. And in some people, they may see slight improvement. For other people, it's like, wow. You know, there was one guy one year that looked like the guy that was his photo would be in the post office. His after was like someone you want to set your friend up with. You're like, oh my gosh. So to talk through the research with me today and to talk through basically the science behind the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge, I've got Amy Feehan with me, Dr. Amy Feehan.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Amy is a research scientist with Ochsner Health and brilliant and has done the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge personally.
Yes.
2 years.
Well, I attempted it in 2020. However, as an infectious disease research scientist, April of 2020 was a rough month. So, following up on my labs that year was maybe not so possible after I maybe didn't give up alcohol anymore in the light of the COVID pandemic.
And in 2021, you came through.
Yes, that one I did the pre-labs and basically had no alcohol the entire time, maybe like 1 glass of champagne, and then did the post-labs and actually saw a decent improvement for my own metrics. And that's where I initially approached you
Yes.
about the data.
Because you and I didn't know each other before.
Right. Yep. I knew of you obviously from having done the challenge before, but yeah, my husband and I came for the post labs, and I was like, what do you think they're doing with all that data? Like, do you think they're publishing? Do you think they do research? And he was like, Amy, can we please just get out of here? Like, I want to wrap this up.
Is he kind of like quiet? Is he more?
Well, he's also a scientist, so he definitely gets it. But also, I run into, I see a shiny and I want to look at the data myself, So he was just like, okay, can we get out of here? And I was like, all right, just let me ask her. And that's when you were sitting at the table, like collecting everyone's data from that day. And as I recall, I was, very professional and not nerdy and awkward at all.
You weren't nerdy or awkward at all. You were exuberant.
I was just like just like vibrating with like, what if I could look at the data? And so that's when I asked, like, are you guys doing anything with it? I work within Ochsner. Like, can I help you visualize some of that data? And maybe we could just see if there's anything there.
For me, it was like, wow, this is a missing link that we have, because we do have all this data. And, what you do when you're looking at this data, as we said, you can look at an individual one-on-one basis. So Amy can look at her data and sees what specific markers are in her, or her husband who did it also, what is specifically improving in their pre and post metrics before and after. But that might not be the case for everyone. You don't know this. And so what we're looking at is collective data, and the data is de-identified. So that means any personal identifiers are removed. So if anyone from outside of our immediate Ochsner organization, so that was the beauty of Amy being an Ochsner research scientist, is that she could access this, I'm air quoting legally, but legally with us,
Yes.
And so we were able to look at this because part of, as a participant is coming through the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge, they agree that our Ochsner team can view their labs. And so it's something that they've given us permission to see. So the fact that Amy, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because I had, as a dietitian, looked at it, and you process it and you can sort of see some trends, and we would kind of sort the data and see the highs and the lows pre and post, but we're doing it in just a very ballpark way.
Right.
Not at all to the level of detail that you're processing and analyzing this data.
Yeah. And so the important thing to realize about any study that uses like grouped data like that is that, you have your mean or average, changes from pre and post. They might be way higher for some people and they're going to be way lower for some people. So like, let's say, somebody does this challenge, really only has like 1 drink a week. And then they go to 0 drinks a week. They might not see a giant drop in their cholesterol, but somebody who goes from drinking 10 drinks a week to none a week might see a bigger change. And so that, and even somebody who weighs more as a percentage, they're going to lose more weight if they start to lose weight versus somebody who is smaller body weight. So it definitely varies from individual to individual. But what we wanted to say was, okay, if you take a whole group of people who are willing to participate in an intervention like this, presumably they're going to try to not drink, and then they do their follow-up labs. If we apply this community intervention to all comers, are there changes that we can see in the data in things like liver enzymes, B12 absorption, cholesterol, and
triglycerides.
Right, triglycerides.
And then weight, body fat.
Yep. Oh, yes, of course.
So those
things
are all
people really care about.
Yeah, right. They're like, my cholesterol, like that seems so far down the road.
Yeah,
like
that's
it's
something
like
I don't see, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
my waistline though. But
Right.
so that's sort of the gist of it. We're excited. So Amy worked really closely with us and pulled this together, pulled it into basically a paper for submission, for journal submission.
Yeah, so it's like a brief research paper, and it's under review right now by a journal. So hopefully we'll be getting that out to everyone's eyes soon. But we can kind of talk about the data that we found.
100%. And it's cool because anecdotally, this is something that I've been seeing this will be our 7th year doing it. And so I've seen I've seen the transformation. I've seen the changes. I've seen some really extreme improvements but it's all been individual. So to be able to kind of look at this collective data like this is just really, really cool. So let's start with like you said, the stuff that's going to really get people's attention, but we said earlier, like in the intro, if there's one thing you can do that is going to, improve your sleep and this appearance of your skin and your focus and help with anxiety,
Right.
I mean, people would absolutely, if there was
if
a
that
drug.
was a pill. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, like for me, just my personal experience, which obviously can be very different for other people, giving up alcohol in a city like New Orleans seemed like a crazy idea. And for me, like the first 2 weekends socially were difficult. So that was the time when it was like, oh, people are asking me why I'm not drinking. People are asking me if I'm pregnant, like all those like, for some reason, people here really care about what kind of a drink you're putting in your body. But once you kind of like break through that for a couple of weekends, then it just got easy. And it was kind of like, oh, well, I can have a seltzer, or I can substitute in some zero proof cocktail or something, so that I still have my special, treat that I'm enjoying socially, but it just doesn't have to be alcohol.
I find that first window, like you said, for you, is the first 2 weekends. The first experience that you're going to have with this, it almost feels like to me, like you're like trudging through like quicksand.
Yes.
And it happens in slow motion, and you feel very like awkward and clumsy in your responses.
Yes. Yeah. Especially like, I don't know why, but it's just, people are just very preoccupied. And I'm sure other parts of Louisiana too.
With alcohol?
Yeah. It's just with like why you are not drinking, and it's like, why do you care? I'm putting a liquid into my own body. Like it has nothing to do with you, but people, want you to have a good time and be part of the group. And we're social creatures, so that's part of it. But if you can just sub out something that's non-alcoholic and still have, be participating
and trying to avoid
easier.
some of that. When I first, was doing my first experiment with like going alcohol free for actually a little test period before we did it open to the public, because I wanted to do it on myself first and see what is this going to feel like and be, and so I could speak to it. I remember a friend came over, and it was within that first week or so. It was a husband and wife walk in the door, and they're like good friends of ours. They immediately just walk into the kitchen, and he's going to open, he had brought whatever wine, and I said, no, I'm good. He's like, you're not drinking? And I said, well, no. He said, ever? And like, it's like shrieks like this, like higher pitch. And I'm like,
are you sick? What's happening? Yeah.
Well, not right at this moment. I don't know it's going to be in the future, but like for right now, no, I'm not. And I remember it was like, he said, well, I'm drinking, and I was like, okay. And so it's very hard. And I remember the first time that we went to a restaurant when I was doing my own alcohol-free dipping the toe in. And it was a restaurant that we went to often, and it was a small restaurant. And like, so you kind of like, odds were you might have sat in that same seat before. So it's an experience that it's a recording of an experience that you are very familiar with.
Totally.
And I normally would sit down, and the first thing that as the server would come over, I would request a glass of wine.
Wine list. Yep.
Or no, I just even knew which wine.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then the server comes over, and I was like, do you have a sparkling water? Every word was pushing out of my lips. And I'm like, it just felt really clunky.
Yeah.
And then after that, the next time, it's a breeze.
Yeah. And for me, one thing that was really reinforcing was like, choosing to forego that in a social setting. It was like, looking back, like I had a great time. And also I'm not super bloated from having like 5 beers at this thing or something.
I wake up feeling great.
It was such a positive reinforcement on the back end to say like, hey, that was still fun. I didn't need alcohol for that to be fun, Do you
know when I did that little self-experiment, it was in 2015. And because the first ever alcohol free for 40 challenge was in Lent of 2016. So I had pitched it to my editors at the newspaper, then the Times-Picayune, and they were like, yeah, let's go for it. And I was like, okay, let's try it. And so I said, let me put myself on a 40-day. The very first week, it was December. And I was like, okay. And I remember going to kind of just what you said, a party. And it was a work party where I knew I was going to know some people, but it was a company that did a bunch of things with us, but it wasn't my own people.
Right.
And so
potentially socially awkward a little bit. Yeah. Where like alcohol helps maybe.
And instead of Ubering there, I don't know if we had Uber in New Orleans in 2015, taxiing it there, instead of cabbing it or Ubering it there or whatever, I was like, I'm driving because I'm not going to have a drink there. Right. And I got there and I had a great time, great conversations. And then that same very first week my husband has the section from his group that he works the closest with. It's about 30 plus people. We have a holiday party each year. And it's one of those that it goes usually past 2 a.m. And so to not have anything, but I was like, because I had also asked my physician, can I test my labs in 1 week? I don't know if I ever told you this.
No.
So he said, Molly, I'm not sure that you're going to see a change in 40 days in people. And I said, can you just humor me and let's try this 40-day challenge with me? And by the way, can we also do it in 1 week? But so, because my labs, the first time I did it was after just a normal weekend of like early December drinking.
Yep.
And there were really, a lot of them were really high.
Yeah.
So I asked him, could I do my labs in 1 week from now? And he was like, kind of blew me off and okay, let's, and then he humored me and he allowed me to go back 1 week later. So for that week, it was really important to me to not even have one drink.
Right. Yep.
And when I went back for those labs, all of the liver enzymes, the inflammatory marker, all of that had been above at the high end of normal or above normal limits were all at the low end in 7 days. Amy.
Wow.
And so my physician, he actually he's in a different practice now outside of Ochsner, but he tells the story and he says, people are like, oh, like you think you're always right or whatever. He's like, well, there was this one time I was wrong. And that's like how he tells the story, And so he was like, wow, and so he's been really interested in kind of following the trend of what we've seen with alcohol free for 40. So all of that is to say, as you put yourself in these scenarios and you realize that you can do it, it becomes so much easier.
Right. And also doing it doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, you went the entire time and not one drop of alcohol past your lips. Because like you said, even just quitting for that 1 week makes a substantial difference for some people. So like, okay, let's say you
had a glass of champagne
and you decided, oh, we're going out to a nice dinner just for tonight. I'm going to have some wine and like, that's going to be fine. That's not a reason to like throw the baby out with the bathwater and say like, oh, I did it once. I might as well just give up and not go back for my post labs. Like you can get back on the horse and like still see a dramatic change, from point A to point B.
Let's take a minute to talk about NutriSense, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. NutriSense offers continuous glucose monitoring. They call it CGM. It's just so cool, y'all. It allows us to track in real time just how our blood glucose levels respond to what we eat, our physical activity, our sleep, and even our levels of stress. Knowing how our body uniquely responds to these internal and external factors is absolutely fascinating, and it helps to guide us in knowing just which lifestyle changes can truly be the most impactful to help us reach our wellness goals. Each NutriSense continuous glucose monitor sensor lasts for 14 days, and each subscription plan includes 1 month of free one-on-one support from a registered dietitian. It's your personal dietitian. That is one of my favorite components of this program. NutriSense's CGM program also includes an app to help you track your data, to understand your glucose trends, to see how what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how all of this impacts your glucose levels. Putting on the CGM sensor is painless. For me, it feels like even less than a finger stick that you may have done in the past. So head over to nutrisense.io/fueled. That's NutriSense.io/fueled and use promo code FUELED for $30 off any NutriSense CGM subscription. That's nutrisense.io/fueled, promo code FUELED. Talking about the people who came back for post-challenge labs, as you looked at the data and you cleaned up the data so that you had what you were analyzing was only people who came for before and after.
Right. Yep.
And you were impressed with what the return rate was.
Yeah. So I think the first year was something like 63% participation rate, from people who signed up to like completing those labs. The second year was the pandemic, so like no judgment there. The return rate was like 23%, which was still not zero, which was surprising to me. Yeah, 23%. And for that year, it was separated pre and post by 83 days, not 40 days. So not only did those people stick it out, they stuck it out for double the length of the challenge in a global pandemic. So gold stars all around to those people. I don't know who you are, but like God bless, because that's amazing. I was not one of the people who followed up in 2020. But then in 2021, 344 people participated both pre and post. And that was an 83% retention rate, which is really high for any kind of community intervention program. And so very impressive. But I think a lot of it has to do with like, at least from my perspective, I want to see my own data. And, maybe for someone who kind of gave up on it early and just didn't really do the no drinking thing, they don't really care to see their data afterward. But if you like stuck it out for that challenge, even if you did it like 90% of the time, isn't it worth seeing, your final results? And so,
that's what we saw is like when people are coming back to the challenge, the strong assumption is if you're going through it, we wouldn't say hassle, but you're getting yourself potentially across town.
You're doing something different.
Right.
Yeah.
You're getting yourself there. You're doing these labs. You're standing to go to all these different stations. Like you are taking the time and investing what's going to be at least an hour of your time total, to do this. You're not going to do that if you continued your normal drinking habits.
Right. The other thing is, like, if you are willing to show your face on Ash Wednesday to say, let me take a look and see what my blood looks like right now. If you're someone willing to do that part, then you got to check out what happens on the back end after, at the very minimum, not drinking like you're drinking during Mardi Gras. Right.
Right. So high return rate. And, like Amy's looking at, well, what are all the reasons? Because a lot of community interventions, the return rate is where it's voluntary. They're not being paid.
Right.
They're not receiving some incentive.
Yeah,
there's a monetary or otherwise.
Right. Significant drop off there. Like people just, I'm not that interested in it anymore, or like it's a hassle to go do it. If there's nothing really that I'm getting out of it, for the most part, I'm not going to do it. And that's speaking for myself too. Like if there's nothing really for me in this and it's just the goodwill of like participating, I don't know. That doesn't mean much to a lot of people, I guess. So being able to see your own data is valuable enough to enough people that we had an 83% return rate.
And you see your own data at the beginning. So your labs, you're able to view usually within 24 hours. For some people, it's a little bit longer, but pretty much very, very soon.
Right.
You're seeing it. It's through the electronic medical records. So it's in my Ochsner, my chart. You're able to see your labs. And then the physical metrics, you're seeing it right then because you're getting your body composition printout. You're getting your blood pressure. And then we do that ridiculously close-up photo of someone's face to see the before and after.
Everyone loves, but speaking for myself again,
it's very awkward.
The way you look, especially Ash Wednesday after all of the hubbub, not always the greatest.
Your before and after pictures are actually in our the list of things that we're going to try to avoid. And it was because probably what you just said, your before, you had your hair pulled back in a baseball cap.
Yeah.
Your after looks like a glamour shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you talking about mine specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yours.
God.
Because it also, your hair and everything just looks so different. It's a little bit hard to say.
Is there a change? Or is it because I just was rolling out of Mardi Gras that first day?
And then the second one, you've got, the full face of makeup and your hair is done.
Because I wasn't drinking all the time to do my hair and makeup.
So it's hard though for someone to have the exact same scenario in their photo.
Yep.
But if you're listening to this and you're about to come in, please try to make note of what you have. And also our team, part of what we're going to be asking people to remove their hat, remove their glasses if possible, because you see there's a lot of reflection. There's a lot that we learned and really looking at these photos closely. So with that's sort of big picture of what it's all about. So starting with some of the results, the data that gets people's attention. So if you're kind of on the fence, and again, if you're listening to this and you missed it, there's always next year. And you can always do a challenge like this on your own at any time.
Absolutely. And I think typically, I don't know what your experience has been, but if you're, you have a general physician, a lot of these labs that are ordered are pretty typical labs. So it's not like something that you would need a specialized lab for.
Right.
They should be pretty accessible. But I feel like the banner results that we found, and again, these are going to be average changes that I'm talking about. And we'll only talk about the average changes if they're statistically significant from pre-labs to post-labs. So for weight and all these other physical metrics were only collected in 2019 and 2021 because of the pandemic. We didn't do it in 2020. But for 2019, weight dropped by 5.7 pounds on average. And in 2021, it was 3.8 pounds on average. And whenever I do stuff like this or low carb or whatever, you think oh, wow, those 5 pounds are just water weight. Yeah. But actually, because we were able to measure pounds of body fat and percent body fat, we know that in the 2019 data, the pounds of body fat was dropped by 4.4 pounds. So that's 77% of the weight lost was actually body fat. And kind of similarly in 2021, 3.3 out of the 3.8 pounds lost were body fat. So that's 87% of the weight loss was fat, which is good news because, that's what people want to get rid of, not necessarily just the water weight, right?
And like Amy said, that's an average. We had some people, like you said earlier, depending on your size, what your habits are coming in, some people may say in that 6 weeks, they lose 20 pounds.
Right.
That's not going to be common. And a lot of people shouldn't lose 20 pounds.
Totally.
But, you might see 8 pounds, 12 pounds, 20 pounds. And then some people don't lose any.
Right.
And there's one thing that we don't control for is people's other choices. And we find that sometimes when someone is giving up alcohol, they start to crave more sugar. So it's often the ice cream confessions that happen
Yes.
at the follow-up. And we're like, so we try to address this throughout of like, ideally we don't want to replace one vice with another.
Totally.
And so, but sometimes, I mean, it's definitely like it's often ice cream is the confession in there.
So funny.
It's very interesting. And it's not just one year. I mean, it's a thing. So with that, not everyone is making nutritional changes, or they're actually making nutritional changes for the worse in place of their alcohol. So average is still, let's say roughly 3.5 to 4.5 pounds of body fat. And again, many individuals, it's much more.
Right. Yes. So since it's an average, that means half are above and half are below, right? So like, yeah, for some people it's way more. And for some people it's, less. And there are people too who participate in this who are just like generally extremely healthy people who are not, their goal is not to lose weight.
Right. Let's talk for a moment about NutriBullet, one of our sponsors for this week's episode. We have had our NutriBullet blender for years. We love it. We use it practically daily. If you're not familiar, NutriBullet is super easy to use. It's really easy to clean. It's a blender. It's sort of like an all-in-one thing. You blend it, and the part that you're blending in is also what you drink out of. And their signature blending process transforms fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds into silky, nutrient-dense smoothies. We recently tried NutriBullet's blender combo for the first time, and oh my gosh, it is wildly powerful in the best of ways. It's got everything that we know and love about the NutriBullet, plus the performance, the capacity that you expect from a full-size blender. From refreshing smoothies and protein shakes to savory soups and dips, the NutriBullet can do it all. And the NutriBullet blender combo, when we talk about power, it's 1,200 watts of power, which is apparently a lot, because seriously, y'all, any papers or anything light like that you have around, it actually blows around a little bit. There's so much power coming out of it. But that power makes it effortless to blend a wide array of so many different types of fiber-rich produce. So go to NutriBullet.com, use promo code FUELED for 20% off your first order. Once again, that's NutriBullet.com, promo code FUELED for 20% off. Talk to us about blood pressure.
Yeah. So blood pressure, actually, so I was doing some digging around. We saw blood pressure changes for systolic and diastolic. We looked at separately. In 2019, systolic blood pressure dropped by 9 points, which is substantial. And then in 2021, it dropped by 7 points, both significant. And then diastolic didn't drop on average in 2019, which again, that was a smaller group of people. But in the 2021 group, diastolic blood pressure dropped by about just a little over 4 points.
So when we're looking at blood pressure, and again, remembering the reason we didn't do 2020, we did 2020 labs because people could go to the lab facility, have their blood drawn. 2020 was still deep quarantine, deep COVID.
That was stay-at-home order time. Yep.
Still be socially distant. And 83 days later, it was the alcohol-free for 83. They went in and got their labs, but we were not able to do their physical metrics, which included blood pressure, weight, etc. So when Amy is saying, 9 and 7 points for systolic, that's basically between those 2 years, we're looking at an average of 8-point drop in your systolic blood pressure. And then this past year with our biggest sample size, just over a 4-point drop in your diastolic blood pressure. And that's something that is like one thing that we don't have and that we don't track, but some people who do have watches that are tracking in their average resting heart rate, that's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that would change, gradually over time too. And so if you're into like self-tracking, definitely this is an opportunity to collect some of your own data too with, your Fitbit or whatever.
There's we actually had a engagement party for my sister-in-law here a couple of weeks ago, and there was a couple and they're in Baton Rouge, and they're so excited about the Alcohol Free for 40 challenge, and they hadn't done it before, but they'd done their own observations, and they had dialed back alcohol, and they noticed that like they were pulling out their phones, which sync to their fitness tracker. I can't remember which tracker they used, and they were able to see the average, and it was basically graphed it and charted it. So you would see their average resting heart rate through the night during the hours that they're asleep, and you would see it sort of just like not like a flat line, but relatively flat, and then a huge spike, and that would be like on the one day in that window.
Yep,
they had drank.
Yeah,
and their resting heart rate was like significantly like like 30, 40 points higher at night.
Yeah. So actually, there was a Chinese study of male drinkers, and this was a huge one. It was like 4,000, 5,000 people. And they found that, especially like binge drinking, where people are drinking, between 10 and 30 drinks per week, people were at a 1.5 to 2 times higher likelihood of having hypertension. And that risk directly increased with, increased alcohol intake. But also, even like on these marginal increases, with each additional 1 drink per day, that was associated with a 1-point bump higher for systolic blood pressure and half a bump higher for diastolic blood pressure. So like really the difference between you drinking 4 beers and 5 beers could actually mean something for hypertension and your blood pressure. So like this is another instance where like it's not all or nothing. You don't need to say, oh, well, I had 1 beer tonight, might as well have 6. You can stop right there and you're already like mitigating some additional harm that you might be doing.
Before we get into labs, as you know, we're talking physical metrics, we talk blood pressure, weight, body fat, the photos that we had the before and after. But on that same note with blood pressure, a lot of people would say, well, I drink to unwind. I drink to relax. And when you look at what's happening inside of our bodies, it's actually having the opposite effect.
Yeah, I that would be a fair assessment, I think.
One thing, and I'll link to this, I did an interview, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, with a researcher who does, it looks at basically the science of alcohol metabolism. And so the podcast is called The Science of Alcohol on Our Mind, Body, and Spirit. And I was talking with him because I was like, there's a thing, we feel anxiety go up when we drink more. And a lot of people will feel it. And if they're tuned in and they're aware, a lot of times people are just drinking as their normal daily course, and you don't even realize that it's linked.
Right. And it's making like a detriment
Right.
every day, day after day over time, that it's like more of a chronic condition.
And people say, I've had such a rough day. Let me pour a glass of wine. I need to unwind. And what actually happens, in the way that he explained it, I thought it helped me kind of visualize it. He was like, basically, it is consuming alcohol on a regular basis. It is basically oversensitizing our body's stress response. So the things that normally we might find mildly stressful, our body is basically oversensitized and like overreacting to it.
Which you might also notice during the challenge in that first week when you stop drinking, like you might be just a little more irritable from time to time as like your sensitization levels maybe sort of normalize a little bit.
And find that things that maybe used to cause you almost like your heart race or your, that anxiety to go up. A lot of people say, I find that I'm nicer now. People tell me that I have more patience. My family says I'm more patient. Like there's like a shift in how people are handling, it's because the stress isn't going to change. The external stressors are there, but how are we responding to it? And so I think when we're looking at something that's harder to measure is our reaction, our anxiety levels, and our reaction to stress. That's very hard to quantify. It's very subjective in how we're feeling. But when we're looking at something like heart rate data and blood pressure data, it does align there.
Yeah. And I think it's also helpful for people to see it too, so it's like, it's not just that you have to notice a subjective change.
Right.
If you can look at it and say, the feedback I'm getting from my Fitbit is saying that like, actually my resting heart rate is plummeting over the course of doing this, is very helpful, at least for me. I'm a data nerd, but I think a lot of people are very into self-tracking to kind of see that data reflected in their experience.
And being open to the feedback that people around you are giving. So when someone says, wow, you're being so much more patient, like,
oh, this might be worth it.
Right. So listening to this, some of the other things before we get into the lab. So anxiety is one that I think that's one that I found like was huge. Even in that first week, I was in a few scenarios like, public speaking type things or things on TV that had been causing that heart race and kind of that stress response. And that week I didn't have it. And what was interesting? A lot of times before I would say, oh, well, I'm going to have such and such event tomorrow morning. And then I want to make sure I get a good night's sleep. So I'm going to have a glass of wine tonight.
Interesting.
Right. And alcohol, we know, is a sleep disruptor. And so that's something also the research I was talking about, Dr. James Garbutt, I'll link to this in the notes. He does a really fantastic job of explaining just how alcohol disturbs our sleep. So it might make it easier for us to fall asleep because or pass out.
Right. Yeah. But it's not like good quality
Right.
sleep that's going to make you feel good the next day.
And a lot of times people, if they're drinking, they wake up in the middle of the night, they can't go back to sleep. It's kind of that 2 a.m. thing. So you're not having the depth or the quality of sleep, even if when you hit the pillow, you're able to fall asleep faster. So anxiety, sleep is something that you could maybe, if you've got a fitness tracker, you can see a little bit objective data on it, but energy. And then, going back to why we do that photo, it is remarkable to people. And people know their faces the most. You're looking at your face in the mirror, like even if you're not, someone's not staring at you, you're brushing your teeth.
You're going to notice a change before anybody around you does.
And the clarity in the eyes, the under eye circles, the puffiness, just the sheer puffiness that happens.
Which again, when your pre-photo is Ash Wednesday morning after Mardi Gras, like that might even be like the worst version of you.
Right.
So.
And those are some that are, again, we're talking objective data, but there is so much that is subjective, that is more, just paying attention and being aware of these things to look for. How am I sleeping? How's my energy? Do I feel like at 3 or 4 o'clock, I want to take a nap, or am I able to kind of continue and feel strong through my day? So pausing, if you're choosing to do it, whether it's with us during Alcohol Free for 40 or at any time, really paying attention to those small changes, because those are huge.
Those are maybe more valuable to you
in that
right
moment
now versus like, oh, my cholesterol is whatever number, like that doesn't really mean anything on a daily basis for you, but like, wow, I really have been sleeping much better. Then when when it's like a question of after this challenge, do I keep not drinking or do I kind of go back to letting myself have a little bit, or whatever your decision is there, like reflecting on those changes that affect your daily life matter probably a lot more than the labs do, even though I like the hard data better personally, but
the day-to-day motivator to stick with it.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you handling hard situations or hard circumstances? And when you can deal with that better, everything feels better.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a minute to talk about Nutrafol, sponsor for this week's episode. The nutrients in Nutrafol supplements support healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of hair thinning: stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and metabolism. Nutrafol is a physician-formulated nutritional supplement that is made with potent botanicals. So no matter your stage in life, Nutrafol has a solution. Nutrafol has targeted formulas for women and for men that are clinically shown to improve hair growth and thickness through all stages of life. It is possible to grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com, entering promo code FUELED to save $15 off your first month's subscription. This is their best offer anywhere. It's only available to U.S. customers for a limited time. Plus, free shipping on every order. Get $15 off at Nutrafol.com. That's spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FUELED. Okay, so let's get into the hard data. I also want to make sure, and I don't want to forget this, so I'll say it, and you can remind me too.
Okay.
We have some really incredible feedback. So one of the things that we have people do is when they sign up, there's a whole bunch of different questions we're asking, and then at the end, same thing, and asking people about their experience. And there's just so much really cool feedback from that. So I want to share a little bit of that with our listeners. But before that, let's get into so we're kind of starting, for those of you who may not be total objective numbers people, we're starting with physical data and then subjective, your anxiety, your mood, and all this. And now we'll go back to hard data with numbers. Labs.
Yep.
And then we'll end on our feel good for people. If you're kind of like, I'm on the fence, I think that'll put you over the edge. Okay, tell us labs.
Okay, so the labs overall that we looked at were some liver enzymes, ALT, AST, GGT. We looked at vitamin B12 absorption. I'll just, spoiler alert, that one just went way, way up from pre to post by about 50 points. Or 50 picograms per milliliter, if you want to be technical. But that's one of the ones that B12 doesn't get absorbed as well when you have like caustic interactions of alcohol in the gut. So you take away that alcohol, gut heals, and is absorbing B12 better is a reasonable conclusion here. And then for liver enzymes.
But it was like really different.
Yes.
Like wildly different.
And even people who are in, the low end of the normal range really pushed up into that upper end of the normal range. So that's very good. And then with liver enzymes, And just talking about our 2021 numbers, where we had 344 people complete both pre and post labs, we saw drops in ALT and AST of about 3 points each. And then for GGT, that dropped by almost 8 units per liter. And so that's, normalizing of liver enzymes, or just, drop overall. And then cholesterol, a lot of people are worried about cholesterol. And that the total cholesterol dropped almost 16 points. HDL dropped by about 6 points, and then LDL by just under 4 points. But the triglycerides took a real dive. That was, we had from pre to post, the mean change was 27 milligrams per deciliter. So that's, definitely these cholesterol numbers are not on par with like someone who's taking a statin because they need to lower their cholesterol, clinically. But for a 40-day challenge where you're just changing one thing, they're not super substantial. Like, you're not going to cure high cholesterol with this, but it's going to take a chunk out of it. And I think there's something to be said for that.
And triglycerides, like the average for this past year was just a hair under 27 points.
Yep.
Normal triglyceride levels is 150.
Yep.
And so that kind of puts it into perspective. Now, who knows where people are starting? A lot of people start in the 300s and plus. But when you think, okay, well, normal is 150. Some people may be in the 2s or 300s, but still, nearly a 27 points. That's a chunk. It's not nothing. It's not insignificant.
Yeah. So if you look at just the median, the middle number, percent change. So instead of using the units that you just defined, the triglycerides in, it was about a 17% drop on, the mean values. So that's not nothing. I think that's pretty substantial for a lot of people, 20% change almost.
So when we look at numbers here and we look at the impact it has on total cholesterol, the impact on LDL cholesterol, the impact on triglycerides, how many people are really fighting these things and struggling with these things? What I thought was really interesting is like normally kind of like the, in the nutrition world and the medical world, we look at, okay, triglycerides are linked to alcohol consumption. When someone says, well, what makes my triglycerides high? Our answer would be alcohol, sugars, processed carbs. These things raise triglycerides. Mm-hmm. When we look at what raises my LDL cholesterol, my bad cholesterol, the answer is not usually alcohol. That is not something that when we say, what are strategies to lower your bad LDL cholesterol, alcohol is not in that conversation.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind too with this particular data set is that we don't have like food diaries for everybody who did it. So for me personally, when I give up alcohol, I also tend to give up late night pizza and other things that probably might contribute more than alcohol itself. But the bad
whatever's the next day, the hangover food the next day.
Yes,
you're right.
Because actually, and scientifically proven, greasy food does help a hangover. But yeah, if you're just not doing all that stuff and just thinking about like the calories that you consume when you drink alcoholic drinks, you're losing that weight. You're probably also decreasing, the LDL. So it's like, we talked about the like soup of biology before. It's like there's never a like 1-to-1 thing that's happening there. It's like if you take one thing out, it's all kind of going down because your weight's going down and everything else. So,
and it's impossible to tease that out because we don't live in a lab environment.
Right.
And one thing, so we're not looking at only alcohol change and zero other changes in someone's life, because also you're not drinking, you're going to be less likely to late night eat. Like you said, you're not going to have that hangover food you're craving for the next day.
Maybe you're more likely to get up and go on a run in the morning.
Yes, you're going to hit the gym more.
Yeah.
There's all types of other behavior changes that you're not even really realizing you're doing. So if we ask someone, did you make any significant behavior changes? The answer may be no, because they weren't really trying.
Right. Yep.
They weren't following a low carb diet.
It was just like a matter of convenience.
Yes.
Like, hey, I'm not hungover today, so I think I'll take a walk in the park, or
So if things like cholesterol, triglycerides are things that you're kind of battling against, then this is like one more reason to do this. The anxiety that we talked about earlier, if that's something, I mean, my gosh, like,
well, and to be fair too, like taking away alcohol won't really fix an anxiety disorder. Like, we're not talking about things where like your cholesterol's so bad that like it's clinically significant and you need to get on a statin immediately. None of this stuff is going to perfectly fix everything, right? But like making a small, meaningful change in the right direction, it's just as easy as like saying no to alcohol for 40 days.
Well, how quickly is someone going to reach for that pill when maybe we don't need that so much when we're making these other lifestyle changes, because also as you're cutting this alcohol back, at least, and you are hopefully more active, and all of these things tie into how we handle stress, how we're handling all these other aspects of our life. You know, it just all ties in. And so it's something that seems simple because it's just giving up alcohol, but just giving up alcohol for 40 days is wildly overwhelming to people.
Yes, especially here, I think.
Yes.
You know, like that's it. Maybe in some parts of the US and other cultures, like alcohol is not as much a part of it. I think the social piece makes it the hardest here. You know, now, I don't think that most people here are physically dependent on alcohol. Some people certainly are, but yeah, that social piece definitely makes it tricky here.
Some of the feedback we got from the participants on this last one, and you'll love this one. Like, you know, this is one, and I'll just read a couple of them, but like, I loved doing this challenge. It was amazing to see the difference in my numbers in such a short time. They went straight to the numbers.
Yep.
That was the only that was their main sentence of feedback.
Was that me?
It probably was. And then another one said, "This was huge for me. I'm a boozer."
I love it.
And I drink every night. So 40 days was crazy. Since the challenge has ended, I don't drink daily. I spend more time exercising, and my heart rate has dropped 15 beats.
Nice.
So they've probably got one of these trackers that they're saying.
And that's another good point too, is like, yeah, that person didn't say, okay, I'm giving it up for 40 days. Now I'm going to go back to my exact same lifestyle as before. But they also didn't say, you know, okay, I'm never going to drink again. Like, but thinking of the chronic compounding effects of just reducing your alcohol intake in half.
Yes.
Like, what kind of benefits do you see 20 years from now?
Right. And it's hard to think that far ahead.
Right. Of course.
But as you look at, okay, well, what motivates me now? Like we said, some of the things that we're going to feel now is change in weight, change in body fat, all the appearance in our skin. This one I really like. It's, you know, I appreciate this opportunity to be a part of a community with such a healthy goal. I needed the boost to break an unhealthy habit that was getting worse during COVID. And I was so much more mindful of how to deal with the stress and triggers instead of turning to alcohol.
And that gets at the part of this that, like, you know, me as the numbers guy, I don't really, you know, I don't like to get into the subjective piece of things, but really the social support, I think, in this program is a reason for the high return rate too. You know, so people are looking for that sense of community and someone else saying, you know, you're not just out there alone. Like, I'm the weirdo who's not drinking.
Right.
Here's a bunch of people who are also doing that. And by the way, here's a bunch of restaurants that cater to that too.
Right.
So having all those pieces integrated just make it a lot easier to get started.
Right. Our Eat Fit team rallies our Eat Fit partner restaurants to offer 0 proof Eat Fit cocktails,
which are delicious, by the way. They're like so good.
Low sugar, all of this. This one says, I accomplish so much more when I don't do my usual wine/snacking routine at night. Another says, I slept so deeply. The sleep is worth giving up alcohol. Plus, I felt so much better overall. Like, just in, you know, we have someone here is referencing a Monday video. We have something throughout the challenge that is open to all participants, no matter where you are, and it's Mindful Mondays. And it's just 20 minutes or 30 minutes at lunchtime on Monday. And we also had happy hour workouts this past year. And there were evenings. And so we thought 6 p.m. on a Thursday, virtual people that didn't go over as well. I think, and people who did join for the happy hour workouts, a lot of them had their cameras off. I'm like, are they just watching our instructor workout? But the mindful chips, the Mindful Mondays people loved them. So that's something we're continuing this year.
Especially in the midst of a pandemic. I think, like, regardless of whether you're giving up alcohol or not, a Mindful Monday is a good idea.
And so overall, like, all of this that Amy and I are talking about, it's sort of, you know, whether you're doing it with our whole crew as part of Alcohol Free for 40, if it's something that you choose to do on your own, the website is alcoholfreefor40.com. And we list all those labs and physical metrics. So like Amy said earlier, if you're not in the state of Louisiana, because we've got it in 6 cities around the state of Louisiana, if you're outside of the state or you're hearing this at some other time that's not when we're about to start it, you can still go to your physician and say, hey, these are some labs I would like to have. If your physician says, I'm not going to run all of these, the ones that we just talked about that had the most statistical significance across the board were your lipid panel, which includes your cholesterol and your triglycerides, and your liver enzymes, and then GGT, and which is GGT. I said it really fast, and then also B12. those have the most statistical significance across the whole group that came through Alcohol Free for 40. So if your physician is maybe a little hesitant and hasn't done something like this before and is looking at you like, what do you want me to put in this order for? At least you can say, here's the ones that are like bare minimum. Can we do these? If possible, print out or bring on your phone a screenshot of what is on our website, because we list them all for the labs at alcoholfreefor40.com. So you can kind of take that and do on your own. And if you are going to do it this year, remember that Bacchus Sunday, the Sunday, February 27th at midnight is the cutoff date. You can't just show up on Ash Wednesday because there's so much that goes on the back end of it. So signing up in advance is going to allow our team time to place the orders for that, get you in the queue, get you scheduled, and get all of that stuff ready so that when you show up on Wednesday, it's all ready for you.
And it's a very quick process. Signing up actually took me probably 5 minutes. I waited until today to do it. But as long as you have 5 minutes before you hit the parade route with all of your alcoholic beverages in tow, then you can be all set up for Ash Wednesday start.
Amy and I had a meeting earlier today with some other researchers and our philanthropy team of, okay, like what's our plan for next year and how are we doing this? We're already talking about 2023's.
It's coming up fast.
It's coming up. This year, what we're changing, because each year we sort of, let's add something new. Let's add something new that we learn from also. And so this year we actually have a survey that when someone signs up, it is a survey that kind of assesses our relationship with alcohol and kind of our behaviors and our attitudes surrounding alcohol. And then that same survey will be taken again at the end of the challenge. And so that's something that we didn't have before that just gives us a little bit more understanding of a mindset and behavior change and like we said, the alcohol relationship. And then next year we'll have other things that we're looking at expanding and deepening.
Very exciting.
Yes. There's always something. There's some things that we're like, oh, we'd love to see the impact of alcohol on, I'll just say it. One that I would love to see, I think you would love to see, is gut microbiome.
Yeah, how your microbes change.
But
unfortunately, we can't give that data back to participants, though. So we got to figure that piece out still. But
it's
it would be
also
cool.
Cumbersome to ask all of our participants to do a poop test.
Yeah, people aren't as comfortable with that. I find actually when we are doing those kind of studies, the older patients are always like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that, no problem."
I'll poop in a bag.
People who are 20 are like, "What are you talking about? I'm not doing that."
Yes, it would maybe be a turnoff. So, well, it'll continue to grow, and there's more things that we'll be looking at. There'll be more data, more things that we'll continue to learn and evolve. But I'm really grateful to you, Amy, for working with us on this.
This has been so fun, and honestly, like, give me data any day, and I love to make a good graph.
Taking something that started out as this community initiative, we see anecdotally, wow, there's a lot here. Working with you to help us like really pull this data together, make it robust, and it validates what we've seen and experienced.
Right.
So it's just so cool. So any other things that we want to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
I think that's pretty much it here. I feel like too, one other thing, if you're really, really into tracking and data like I am, having like a 1 line a day kind of journal throughout this thing is a cool way. Just obviously we're not collecting that information from you, but it's just a cool way to see like, when does the change happen for me? Let me go back to the
like
beginning.
Keeping your own journal.
Yeah. Just like 1 sentence a day, like nothing huge because then people don't do it, but just like 1 line a day, how you felt today, how you slept today, something like that. And then seeing that transformation for yourself might be a cool idea.
Because it can seem slow, but when you look back over that and you go, oh, wow, I forgot that I was feeling that way.
Right. Or like, oh, I was networking at a function tonight, didn't drink a drop and like actually had an okay time and it wasn't weird. Those kind of changes.
That could also be a good motivator because again, like you said, a lot of people who come through the challenge, they're not coming through it to do an all or nothing for the rest of their life.
Totally.
It's a reset. It's an annual reset. Yep. And so if several months into your normal year, you're drinking, you feel like it's crept back up, pulling that journal out can kind of be like, oh.
Yeah. Remember why this was a good idea in the first place? Yeah. That. And also like, I think there's some obvious like reset periods around the world that people use. Like we've talked about Sober October or Dry January. So like you could just redo this whole thing throughout the year whenever you want, really.
Right. It's very true. Very, very true. Yeah. I've had Melanie Warner Spencer on here. She has a program called the Drink Fit Club. And that's one that she created, the Drink Fit Club. Like, hey, Molly, there's alcohol free for 40, but then after that.
Right. Like we still want that social support piece.
Yeah. So seek her out. And, Amy and I have covered a lot, as she mentioned, the data that she has pulled together into this paper and we've submitted for journal publication, is under review.
Which once it is published, we will obviously be sharing far and wide.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm excited to see you through the challenges here.
Thank you so much. I know, I'm ready.
It's always a blast spending time with Amy Feehan. I am grateful to her for carving out the time to share her insight and her scientific assessment, her rigorous assessment of alcohol-free for 40 data. As I said, it's something that we've been fortunate as, the dietitians working with the program to see and hear, but it's anecdotally, and you're seeing, the individual reports. So to see all this data compiled and to see the significance of the impact that this has both inside and out is just really, really cool. We have a lot of information for y'all. I'll include the links that we talked about in the show notes of this episode. Always, I want to hear what you think, especially this. If you sign up for Alcohol Free for 40, let us hear about your experience. It's so inspiring to us, and we learn from you. We learn from everything that you're sharing with us. If there's things that you see that we can improve, if there's things that you absolutely love and you want us to do more of, all of that is stuff that we're continuing to learn from. So if you do it, you're trying it any time of the year, I always want to hear about it. I am registered dietitian Molly Kimball, and you've been listening to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, the podcast. If you would like more Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, please head over to mollykimball.com, and you can follow me, Molly Kimball RD, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And if you haven't yet, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join us next week for another dose of Fueled Wellness and Nutrition. Thanks for listening, and stay focused on living your strongest, healthiest life.